Okay, so this diagram, believe it or not, is from January 17th. What we're working with right now is it's in with our work for the Capstone course. So that's NET-292 Capstone, and today is the 17th of April. And so Jim Deegan was helping us when we put together this document. So I can't paraphrase Jim exactly, but here's some of the ideas of what we talked about to do and we were working on during this term. First of all, we got some data on the machines, two 10 gig ports, two 10 gig ports. These are the G9s. There's 8 1 gig ports, 8 1 gig ports, and this much memory, 500 gigabytes, 500 gigabytes. And then the G8s have no 10 gig, but they have 16 1 gigs and 127 gigabytes of memory. And then the G7s, which the current system's running on, okay, these systems were added, but it appears Tracy did not install much on those at this point in time. In fact, the G9s were basically empty. But the G7s down here, 200 or 24 gigabytes, 24 gigabytes. So here's tentatively some of the plans that might work for this. So we could divide this to student use. I went through and spring term and fall term, maybe 40 students would be accessing the equipment, guessing 20 in one class and 20 in another class. So it could be 40 to 50 students may need to have one or maybe two virtuals, probably not two, but one, and we thought we'd do those there. I thought we could use these where students, you could have a group of students, let's say six to 8 students would have this one, 6 to 8 would have this one, 6 to 8 would have this one, and then they would develop whatever they need for VMs and so forth using this block, but they work together, so it wouldn't be per student, it would be more dividing it up, and they could do maybe more like even the underlying vSphere stuff, setting up some of that separate, maybe, okay, just thinking out loud, maybe separate from the network up above. For sure, the G9s here, they would be for production. Between them are VMs and VMs for all the different services, which you're going to see here in a minute, the different services around here. Some of the connections, like for example, the green connection here, we were thinking somehow, and I've got a little better diagram, but here's the nexus, and that can be management. We have connections for data. We want connections for data. So when we say bundle here, yeah, these slower machines we would use ether channel and bundle up some of these so we can get 4, 8 gig. You could even bundle them enough to get 10 if you wanted to. We'll see how we want to arrange that. In fact, initially Jesse, when he's working on the project, he can decide how he wants to do that. We talked a little bit about the virtualization of the switches internally, and I'll talk a little more about that later on. We needed VLANs for management. We need it for the pure data. And then Jim talked about networks, and I'm not sure exactly what we're thinking there, but there's more information coming up. And then eventually this will connect to the Catalyst will connect to the classrooms, Catalyst connects to the firewall firewall goes out to the internet, and then we have the different DMZs coming off the firewall, and we'll explain that more in the slides coming up. So this was our first slide today. We talked about we're now at the phase of development. Granted, some of the students are disappointed that they're not actually putting the service together. They asked, one of them asked if they could come on campus and work with it, and I said no. IT services, we had an outage. Josh said about 20 minutes. So one thing we didn't talk about, we need to think about it. UPS, do we need to upgrade that? What's the issues there in terms of should we have that set up so it powers down the systems and so forth? I'm not sure. Who knows if the failure was because of this? Maybe not. I don't know. So we talked about VMware, HP hosts, Nimble, some of the physical things that are in there. IT services are going to help us do the development phase. So today we talked a lot about assets. Really doesn't have much to do with this initially, so we want to keep it simple with the scope. It's like a database, but we're using barcodes, and the students came up with some really good solution, and we're actually Gray Trunk. You know, they're part of Metalcraft, and we're working with them, and Metalcraft's going to supply the barcodes for free. Gray Trunk offer the software for free. So all we have to do is figure out our attributes for our computing devices and go ahead and put them in there, and then add some data and decide where we want to start sequence numbering for our barcodes, and eventually we'll put an order in to Metalcraft and we'll be able to track our own equipment. The slide coming up talks about services, and then we talked about what kind of solution to match those services. And we talked a little bit about VMware. I gave them where we have docs, VMware. And we went through the networking part of those, which is really good. Yeah, I looked through some of that too. Okay, keep rolling. I think I'm up to about 7 or 8 minutes. 17. So again, development, IT services. We talked about the scope, where we want to reach. So then that's where we talk about stakeholders. We have students that use our facilities, and we have the staff at the college that use our facilities. The staff are the IT instructors, and then IT services needs to be involved with everything we do, okay, so that we're all in sync with them, networking and virus software, everything we need to do. And then the general staff, there's times I've done presentations for the faculty, for the campus as a whole, in the classrooms where we teach. We talked a little bit about NetLab. It's approximately $3,000 a year. I think that's for 24 or whatever. I put it in the request. I'm not sure if we want to use that compared to getting everything we need here using our own equipment. Students, 2 basic categories. We have the IT students, which split up in the first and second year. We distinguish between those. The second year students have more responsibilities to help with what we're doing, and the first year students a little less. And then the general public that use the labs. For intro to computers, there'll be a lot of students from programming classes, programming and so forth, that are in the classes that aren't IT students. So keeping all that in mind, what services we're going to offer. So let's run through these. Let me use a different color for the heck of it. Okay, DHCP. The students in our area use the college Wi-Fi, so we don't have to worry about that. But some of them bring their laptops and literally plug them in. We offer DHCP, we offer access to the internet, Active Directory, we offer that. Right now, but we could eventually install probably a Linux box to run MySQL and so forth. So for the students, now the students have to do that. They design their own, install their own. We offer the services on separate servers. So yeah, we offer that. DNS. We're going to offer storage on the Nimble. We got a plan for backup. How we're going to back this up, that's still up in the air. We supply virus software. And then VMs. We're going to supply VM usage for the students. And one thing we didn't talk about today, or we did briefly, is remote access. That's where this NetLab comes in. That makes sense. The access remotely to get in. Currently, we allow access to one server, and that server then accesses all the networking equipment we need and the other Linux machines that people need, so we access that. So that's in a DMZ, and we have it set up so they can SSH into that one machine. So these are all the services we need, or close. You know, we might have, there might be some other things. So here's our current IP addressing. So we have this network we're still using, we'll call it open. We have inside here, we have access list inside the multi-layer switch. That will all change now once we have a couple access points connected there, but this network was not allowed. Okay, so let me do it this way. Yeah, the 20 network was not allowed access to the servers. We've changed our approach now. We have these two networks. We have a DMZ1 and a DMZ2. We'll probably keep those. One is the one we use for like the Linux and the Linux machines and access remotely. DMZ2 we were going to use for some testing and some other options. A little more freedom internally, so different levels where we have those managed on the firewall. Students picked this address for the management address, and this is our current basic inside address that the computers use, like students logging in and getting access to storage and servers and so forth. We left, there's a whole group of addresses in between here, 23 all the way to 29, if we want to add for testing and so forth in our area. Okay. Now, let me highlight this diagram a little bit. So we have two G9s, we have two G8s, we have three G7s, and we have the Nimble storage. So literally, this is more of a physical layout. So yeah, you can see it there. I used red to say, okay, we've got management connections between all these. Okay. For management, separate VLANs, that 172.30 address. So you can see those would be connected. The otherwise, all the rest of these, like, I don't know if we have fiber available, but anyway, these connections, because I know we have fiber on the Nimble. I can't, we can obviously buy fiber connections for the Nexus. So we could run fiber between those. I think 10 gig would be fine if we just go Cat 6 and use 10 gig. But whatever whatever Jesse and IT services, whatever they want to do, we don't have a bottomless budget in our area. I don't know how that all gets split out, but I think 10 gig would be okay. See, we can have our 10 gig connections here for sure. We have two of them there. We can run up down here. These we could bundle those up in ether channel because we have 16 gigs, so we could maybe bundle 8 of those together. And then the same thing. These are much slower, but I'm not as concerned for the G7s in terms of the performance there. But we can look at how many you can run and how we bundle those. And then the key thing here, we would use another color, blue. So just vSphere distribution switches. Let me take that out of there. That's not clear. So you can run your distribution switches to connect your host, and then internally we can run, I use green, we have VMs sitting in here. Internally we can run a standard vSphere switch, at least the best of my understanding. So you can run a standard switch, and what we mean here is a virtual, to make all your connections in there, okay? And then that can connect out. So yeah, we'll have to do a little research. We'll have to get those designed in order to make the communications, if there's an easier way to do it. Through the firewall, we currently have one connection comes through VLAN 20. It's VLAN 21, and it's DMZ 1, we call it. And in the future, once we move the firewall's still in the other closet, but once we move the firewall to here, then that VLAN traffic here would just all run through trunks to the classroom. Okay, and the same thing could happen here. I'm not sure that this would be minimum 10 gig. We could easily bump that up by ether channel. So I don't think we've made that connection yet. We do have a simulator. We have another catalyst switch in there connected here, and we had connectivity all the way out to the internet with that catalyst switch through, I believe the students ran it through DMZ 2, which would be 172.22.0.0/16. Okay, so hopefully this is enough information to get started here. Currently the DMZ1 physically, it goes all the way from the firewall all the way to PC 229, but we aren't going to do that anymore. We're not going to try to physically run them. So coming off the firewall, we would physically connect these 3 ports, and one would be DMZ1, another one would be DMZ2, and then the other one would be our inside network. One more, can you believe it? I still have one more. 15 minutes. You might want to, I don't know, get a soda or a beer while you go through this one. Okay. All right. So we're at Capstone here. We're in the development phase, some kind of server solutions. So this is the same physical diagram. So I talked just a little bit here to better understand the traffic flow, and then looking for suggestions of better ways to do it. So from now on, this catalyst switch here, right here, it will run trunks. We'll just trunk to our devices here, so we can put different traffic on different VLANs. But here, it will physically connect to those 3 different ports in the firewall. One for DMZ1, and here's the IP address, and then DMZ2, that becomes 22. Here, let me do this. That becomes 22, and there's a .1 out here on the end. And then the main network in there, so it doesn't get too confusing. That's that 172.31. It's been that ever since I've been here. Well, ever since they set it up. Now its default gateway is 254. Okay, and that is actually inside this. It's inside the multi-layered switch, and then that runs a separate network over to the firewall, which is a 192.168. So if you have questions on that, you can let me know. But that will change to this port on the firewall will be this default gateway. And we could change that to like 1, but one of the servers was 1. So, okay, so I think we're pretty close. We assign students to prepare services, a solution diagram, IP addressing. So we'll have some documents there that the students will produce, and I will produce an overall document to help us head towards developing the solution. And that is it.